Buenos dias. Buenos dias? Yes, I think. Hello, how are you? Good morning, afternoon, evening. I am semi on time for once. Kind of nice. This is lots of stuff happened, so I'm going to try to get through it in an hour or less. I can have aspirations, right? So, good morning. It is Friday, November 1st, and I am sipping some Salvadoran coffee from Good Beans San Salvador. And I have ordered their 5 pack of like fancy variety stuff. So when that comes in, I will feature that. And let's get started. So ask a question, send a comment on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. It seems that YouTube is the preferred platform for the business centralians who are watching this live stream. So greetings from YouTube or to YouTube land. And in honor of Halloween, we have Kelly Kapoor here. And apparently, this was a much discussed Halloween costume as everyone tried to figure out what she was dressed up as. And I guess the consensus was Katy Perry, whatever that means. No idea. And El fin de semana. I was I was looking forward to watching the new Deadpool movie. And I thought, okay, I kind of like the last, 2 Deadpool movies. This one should be fun. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, the obvious silliness. But sadly, it was, maybe it was just me. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood. It was the absolute worst movie I can recall seeing. Like, it was just kind of painful to get through it. I took several breaks, got up, had dinner or something, came back, resumed it, hoping it would be better, but it was horrible. And I'm kind of embarrassed that I actually just purchased it online for streaming. Anyway, yeah, that was disappointing. Just me? I don't know. It just seemed horrible. Like, every mistake they could have made, they just threw it all in and went for it. And then a load of 3 new ThinkPads arrived for El Salvador. These are T470s, and I show the price later on, but these are still on sale on eBay, amazingly. I don't know where they're coming from, but they're in great condition, work fine, and they are just tanks. I've had one keyboard die, which I'll explain. But other than that, they're great, very inexpensive parts. You can buy just about every part for, a keyboard is $25. The new motherboard is $150. You can buy just about anything you need for them. Or you just buy a new one for $175. Okay. Weekly projects. It was a very busy week. I was finalizing the stuff I need to bring for El Salvador in November, booked the flights finally, need to book hotels and just finalize the schedule. Trying to meet up with a couple people there, perhaps do a user group meetup when we're there through Doug. Did some final laptop testing, and that was those T470s. Business Central training continues in Berlin. They are training other Berliners 3 days a week. I think it's 2 hours per session. So that training is going well. And we have AL development and Power Automate learning underway. So it is progressing. It's going really well. And it's been very busy. And cheers to having the greatest job in the world. I sit here at my desk with a cup of premium artisanal handcrafted coffee with an espresso machine 10 feet away. And I get to hang out and work and do this for a living. It's kind of wild. So I'm very grateful. It's an amazing job. No complaints. I'm having fun. So just a moment of thanks. It's been great. And this was an amazing week. We got a lot done, learned a lot, just all sorts of stuff going on. So it's fantastic. So, yeah, very thankful. I have a great job and enjoy it. On Monday, we had a fun situation where we found what is effectively a bug or a logic flaw in an internal application that we developed, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And we haven't had to touch it in 2 to 3 years. And so we're trying to figure out what's going on here in this code. And we're just like, wait, how does it work? What did we do? Why are there 3 fields for this? And we basically had to relearn and kind of reverse engineer our own code to figure out how did we build this thing. And I've seen many people say that code comments are dumb. They're a waste of space, like this very condescending, some elitist philosophy around code comments being useless. And I think these people do not understand what code comments are for. Code comments do not explain what the city-state zip variable are for. They do not explain what a loop is. Like, we know what those things are. It's not what. Code comments are most valuable in my experience when they explain why. Why did we split this value into 3 fields? I'm looking at this like, what were we thinking? Now, once we dug through the code and we saw what the code was doing and why there were 3 values, we're like, oh, now it makes complete sense. It's the why. Like, I see there's 3 fields. You don't need to tell me there's 3. I want to know, why did we choose 3 instead of 2 or 1 or 4 or whatever? And when we look at that, we're like, oh, okay, got it. We have our initialization vector there. We have our value here. We have our timestamp here. Got it. Crystal clear. But I'd rather not have to dig through the code to figure that out. So we need to comment our own code better, but we also need documentation so we don't even have to go to code. So anyway, this is a little bit of archaeology, digging through our own code. My developer and I were sitting there like, what were we thinking? So it was a lesson in code review and analysis of our own code that we didn't remember, like how it exactly worked, creating better documentation. Now that we see what's going on, we need to discuss how we refactor this and redesign to address the issue that we found 2 to 3 years later. And because this is a live production system, we have to figure out, okay, how do we upgrade this? Because we have activity going on, we can't just have a breaking change. So we have our base, we have our client code, we have our Azure function code, and so we have API endpoints. And so it's a little bit of work to orchestrate how this is going to be changed. But we may just go with the V2 and then migrate customers over to our V2 endpoints. So very interesting. And we also had an issue where my developer was trying to launch the code and he got all sorts of Visual Studio issues, which we've encountered, but we're like, what is going on? He updated this not too long ago, and like he was just getting all sorts of Visual Studio errors. Then we look at the code and we think it wasn't the right version. So we're like, wait a minute. So something's going on and we just haven't touched it in long enough, right? You touch something after 3 years and you're like, just opening the code can be a hassle. So anyway, it was a humbling experience. Yeah, Christian says, isn't a clear function name documentation enough? Yeah, so this particular process involves AES encryption, and so we had to kind of figure out what we were trying to do there, and a lot of moving parts, and we think we made it a little too elaborate, but we recall our mindset at the time. We were trying to be very security conscious, but now we're realizing, okay, maybe we went a little too far and we need to kind of step it back one notch to make it a little more usable. There's plenty of security, we think. So anyway, interesting experience that our own code had us stumped for a while, and we had to have an hour call to do a code review to figure it out and understand how do we address the issue that we found. Okay. Melting laptops. I didn't expect to learn about this, but it seems that El Salvador, like many other countries in the tropical zone, I guess, various climates, it is extremely harsh on laptops in particular. Desktop PCs may not notice an issue, but we have now had, in less than 30 days, I think, 2 Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon Gen 9 motherboard failures. Now, one we knew had a little bit of an issue, and it died like within 2 days of me delivering it. It was very interesting. Okay, glad we took care of that. So I had to bring it home and get it serviced. So this is the replacement of the motherboard on that unit. And that motherboard there, you see with the fans and the heat sinks there, that's roughly $1,100 board if you were to buy it directly from Lenovo retail. This unit was under warranty, on-site repairs. The guy came out, replaced it 15 minutes later. We're good. But now we have had a second one die, won't even turn on. And so different issue. This was a charging port issue. This other one is just dead. It won't turn on. We're not sure why. Everything else seems to work. Charging works. So we think it's another motherboard failure, just a different mechanism of failure. So it is also under super duper warranty. So I'll bring it back, get it serviced, and I'm bringing a boatload of laptops back to El Salvador to serve as a replacement. So this has got me searching. And coincidentally, last month, one of the people I sponsor in El Zonte is right on the beach, and it is roughly average 80 to 90 degrees there all year, and 80 plus percent relative humidity. And interestingly, the keyboard has fried, essentially gone haywire on the T470, which was a surprise. But I found several videos online on how to replace these keyboards, so it's not unheard of. So this is a $25 replacement part off of eBay, just dozens of people selling them, so it's super easy. You replace it, remove 2 screws, pop it out, pop it back in, you're good to go. It's a 5-minute repair. So I'm going to bring this to El Zonte. We're going to fix that keyboard, but otherwise that T470, I believe, is working fine. So this has been interesting, and I'm researching like what is going on here. And I'm finding lots of other stories, anecdotes, forum posts, and videos about weather, high temp and high humidity combined to, let me get rid of this. High temp and high humidity combined to push laptops in particular past their specifications. So this is an example of El Zonte, and this was probably a pretty dry day, 94 degrees Fahrenheit, 61% humidity. And as you'll see later, that is well outside the boundaries of any laptop, short of maybe, say, the Panasonic Toughbook or ruggedized military, purpose-built laptops that are 2 inches thick monsters. This is brutal, punishing environment for laptops. So I had to do some research on the laptop melting point, and it's a thing. So these are the specifications for a Lenovo X1 Carbon Gen 9, and it says operating temp 5 Celsius to 35 Celsius, which is 41 Fahrenheit to 95 Fahrenheit. So if I look back at that slide, what was El Zonte? 94 degrees. So already it's hitting peak temp, and obviously that's probably outdoors, but indoors isn't a whole lot cooler there because most people don't have AC in their homes. So 95 degrees maximum operating temperature, and humidity operating boundaries for humidity 8% to 95%. But the kicker is at wet bulb temperature of 73 Fahrenheit, 23 Celsius. So if you're at 94 degrees and 60% humidity or more, you are well outside of the envelope for these laptops. And it doesn't matter. The MacBook Air, which is a passive cooling, fully sealed, no fans, that's the same. 35 Celsius, 95 Fahrenheit, 90% relative humidity. So a lower humidity point than the ThinkPad. And they're just not designed to be operating at 90 degrees and 60+% humidity. And so doing this research, I found this chart, and this is more for like human temperature comfort levels or animals. But assuming that the thermodynamics of biology apply to laptops, you'll notice this little blue square here. That's basically the upper boundary in terms of temperature and humidity for these laptops. And so that's 95% humidity, 95% humidity at 23 Celsius. Well, the red square is El Salvador. That's just like a routine day in El Salvador. We are just by default outside of the parameters of all of these laptops. And I found a good video, which is where I found this chart. The YouTube channel is Making Tech Friendly. He's a guy in Eastern India, and he has researched this. This is a couple months ago, 2 months ago, that he researched it, wrote a blog post on it, did a couple of videos, and he has a ThinkPad, and he's pointing to the same numbers that I'm looking at. And he is at 30 degrees Celsius, 90% humidity. It's crazy because I'm assuming it's wet season where he's at, and the laptops just die. They just don't last. And so he's like, here are the few things you can do with a laptop. You don't have too many choices, and like there's just not much you can do. So we're trying to make these things survive and figure out how to make them last. But we are now anticipating premature laptop death, and I am just going to literally have a pile of laptops in El Salvador and a pile of parts. We'll have a full service repair center, and we'll be self-sufficient. So yeah, not much else we can do. So moving on to Tuesday, Martes. This painting is The Scream by Edvard Munch in the National Gallery of Norway, very famous painting. And it's quite hard to find a photo online of this original painting because there's so many replicas, prints, whatever, t-shirts, posters, everything, and it's not the original. So I believe this is a photo of the original in the gallery. It's very muted. It's not quite as nice looking as the reproductions, but you get the point. And the reason this is here is because I had a phone call on Tuesday with a BC customer who was looking for a new BC developer because they hired one full-time, started developing this custom project, a very extensive, I don't even know I call it an extension. It's a full-on inventory management module for their very unique industry. And so they have developed, they believe, I haven't verified, they believe they have developed a large ALPTE, and I looked at it and it looks pretty extensive. And the developer is no longer with the company. Don't know when they left. I didn't ask what the situation was and what's unfolding, but they have one laptop with this code. Literally just one laptop, as far as I know. There is no source code management, folks. As far as I know, this developer worked on this for months. We have at least dozens and dozens of pages, tables, objects, extensions, code units, who knows what. It was a pretty extensive looking project. And when we looked at the JSON files, I saw default publisher version 1.0. Now the default publisher, it's like, what? Like nothing was filled out. Version 1.0, if they had an SCM, if they had pipelines, I could excuse that, right? But as far as I know, the IT guy said has had no discussions about GitHub or DevOps with the developer, didn't know what pipelines were. As far as we know, this code is nowhere. And to make it even more fun, we could not find the extension installed in any of their environments. We saw no evidence that this extension had ever been tested or deployed, and the IT manager was puzzled. So we have no idea what the status of this is. We don't know if this code works. We don't know if it compiles. And I said, I'm not touching anything until you make a backup of this entire AL directory. until you fully image this laptop, until you get a backup of everything this developer touched, email, SharePoint, OneDrive, you name it, documents, Office, whatever. I want everything archived, backed up to the hilt, because as far as I'm concerned, you've just lost tens of thousands of dollars of development, because I have no idea what this VS Code solution is we're looking at. And as far as I know, they have zero requirement or design documentation of this process because, hey, I hired a BCAL developer, so they must know what they're doing, and they're an employee, right? So of course they're going to stick around for a long time, and it's a safer investment than hiring a consultant or a partner, and they're so much more expensive, so we're just going to do it ourselves. Like I applaud the strategic direction, the nominal idea of this, but this company has no idea what they've gotten themselves into. They were expecting an imminent release of this fancy schmancy inventory warehouse solution or inventory management solution, and I'm like, I'm willing to help you, but I'm not touching your code. Like, I'm not even going to control the mouse cursor. I'm not doing anything until things are buttoned down. So I sent a full email listing everything we observed and, a dozen points of to do. Until everything is ironed out, we're not touching this. And I proposed we get a copy of their code, spend at least 8 hours doing an initial code review just to see what's in here. We don't know what the solution is because we have no documentation. So Eric says, Steve is not a YOLO kind of guy. Yeah, we'll get into that next. It was a fun week, but yeah, I'm not going to take on responsibility of someone else's, 5,000 lines of code. And to give you context, whoever this developer was, they put an ID range of over 9,000 numbers. So it's like something from 50,100 to 59,500. And I'm like, what are you building here, bub? Like, I don't know who this person was. It just like danger, right? Like red lights flashing all over the place. And I'm like, okay, happy to help you. I'm not going to make millions of dollars off of this project, so I'm not going to take the risk. Anyway, like that's why this painting is here. And the guy is oblivious as to the severity, magnitude, consequence, risk that he's involved. I mean, maybe it's not a risk to him, but I would think if he spent tens of thousands of dollars on this developer's salary and invested all this time and he's got nothing at the end of the day, I wouldn't be happy by that. Anyway, moving on to BC Code History Update. I take responsibility for not catching this, but if I didn't catch it, you probably didn't catch it either. A couple people did catch it. I saw Eric Hogard comment on there on the Twitter thread, but Stefan Marone, you may know, maintains the BC Code History repository on GitHub. It is as far as I know, it's pretty much invaluable for dozens or hundreds of BC developers in order for us to look up and pull down and analyze and use and work with BC code. And so he has made a change to his repository, completely restructuring it. Previously, I think it was just everything was in the main branch and it was a massive repository. So now what he has done is he has completely restructured it to have the region or country region and the version in separate branches. So US 24, US 25, IT 24, IT 25. And so I think it makes it much more manageable. It certainly makes it much more manageable for him and his scripts. He says that it would take over 48 hours previously to try and deal with all this code, and now it runs in minutes because he can do parallel processing of each of these branches. So just need to know that. Otherwise, you're going to go there and say, where else all the code? So check out his blog post at stefanmarone.com. And he did tweet about it. I'll retweet it. But yeah, you'll find it there. And there is some mention of it in the README, which of course I did not read. My apologies. But it works well. I was able to navigate once I figured that out. I had to ask him, and he's like, Steve, read my blog. I'm like, okay. Okay. And the The developer represents the riskiest bus factor of one. Yeah. And so the customer is learning that he hired a developer. He thought that would be a better bet, and potentially it is, but it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of knowing what you're doing. And he trusted this person and assumed they knew what they're doing. Well, he didn't know what to do, and it seems clear the developer did not know how to properly manage this process. Wednesday, miércoles. Managing, testing, and coordinating deliverables was a theme of the day because we're now working with the interns at ERP Center of Excellence. They're cranking out report layouts and configuration packages, and files are flying left and right. And I'm like, whoa, I cannot keep track of this. So my developer and I implemented a process where my developer he's got his build pipelines, but when we get to a release pipeline, that pushes the PTE or app file or extension to blob storage, Azure blob storage. And once that file drops, we have a flow that picks it up, copies it to our SharePoint site, our dev SharePoint site, and our consulting SharePoint site, automatically then sends out an email and says, hey, you have a new release number 123 of this PTE, and go forth and test. So we have that on the PTE side. We did not have it yet on the for other deliverables, and so we have now implemented an initial version of that. Ronald, our Power Automate guru, set up a Power Automate flow where the interns can now drop an RDL file, a configuration package, whatever they need, into a OneDrive share, and that automatically gets copied to the consulting side in a SharePoint folder, and notifications go out. So we at least are starting with that process. So we have a centralized file repository on our side, and it drops into a SharePoint site where everyone knows to look for a new deliverable and notifications. We also implemented consistent file naming convention for everything. So we have, it's like date, customer, report ID, version, things like that, whatever they requested. And so that's what we're going with. So we're making things more consistent, more manageable, and more traceable as well, which is a little foreshadowing there. So yeah, that's going well. Interesting thing, I kind of received some information about a project where we are competing with NetSuite. And to my surprise, I don't know if this is normal or if they just messed up or overscoped or something. The Business Central implementation proposal was less than 50% of the cost of the NetSuite proposal. So I'm told. This is like third or fourth hand for me, because I don't really get involved in that. But that surprised me. So less than 50%. And apparently this is a no-brainer for the customer, even if they liked NetSuite and thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And I've had a partner tell me that if they find out that NetSuite is involved in a competitive bid for their proposal, they will literally walk away. I don't know if they're serious about that or if that was just their sentiment, but this person claimed they would walk away from a proposal if they knew they were competing against NetSuite, which, okay, in this case, bring it on, right? If NetSuite is charging $100,000 and we're able to come in at $40,000, we'll take it. And had a conversation, triple checked. Are you sure? Is this a low risk? Is it a defined scope? Is it an easy implementation? Are we fully covered? And apparently we have more than enough margin in that proposal. So we're potentially going to win against the NetSuite proposal, as far as I know. So I was surprised by that. So let me know, how are you all competing against NetSuite? I was surprised to hear this because I was told, that NetSuite was very difficult to compete against. And also interesting, the dreaded fixed price implementation. In this scenario, there is a request from someone, not necessarily the customer, but a request from one of the parties involved to have a fixed price implementation. And apparently we're going to try that, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, moving on to Thursday. Wow, making good time. Thursday, jueves. Internal testing occurred on a report and some customer testing, and they found issues with this report. It was the BC customer statement, which is a horrible report in my humble opinion. The report doesn't work. It's wrong. Well, the report works, but it doesn't have what they want. More specifically, it has what they don't want. And this is a unique situation, I think, where we looked at their old statement. We said, sure, we can reproduce that layout, and it's just got invoices. What's the big deal? It turns out, as far as I can tell, this customer wants to suppress and exclude credit memos, discounts, and payments, anything that reduces the balance of the customer's account. So even if the customer has a credit memo, they do not want that to show in the statement. If there's an outstanding payment, do not show that on the statement. If there's anything reducing any invoice or customer balance, exclude that from the statement and exclude it from the aging. I didn't see that. No one in our chain saw that. And so, okay. Well, it turns out the testing occurred a couple days before they wanted to send out statements. You're starting to see some pattern here. So I said, stop. This is not acceptable. And Jocelyn had just wrapped up another project. So I said, Jocelyn, you're about to learn something new. We're about to conduct our first after-action review here. We're not done yet, but there was a breakdown here. Stop. Unacceptable. We need to figure out what's going on. How did this happen? And I kind of am guessing how it happened. I don't know that we could have anticipated it, but the after-action review, here's a link to one of many blog posts and articles on the topic. And it is basically saying, okay, what are we going to do? What happened? How did it happen? How can we have identified this earlier? How can we have addressed it? And identify breakdowns, identify successes. What did we do wrong? What did we do right? What can we improve? And if Steve is in VS Code on Thursday night at 8 o'clock writing code, you know something has gone very wrong with this process. And so here I am modifying a report extension. Clearly, I don't know what I'm doing. I figured it out miraculously, I think. But we had multiple breakdowns, and it just so happens that our developer is on vacation this week. So that's why this was a bit of a fire drill. Normally, it wouldn't be so bad. But it was kind of good in that this pushed me to the point where I'm like, whoa, stop. Everyone stop. This is not, something's wrong here. So we're going to look for ways we can improve. And at the moment, this will be internal. I'm just now wondering, it's like, okay, have you ever done an AAR with customers? And I suspect most partners are highly reluctant to do this with a customer because the customer is going to say, oh, well, you need to give me a $10,000 credit because you messed up. You didn't detect this. You weren't a mind reader, right? And then there's blame and liability. So this is one of those things where it's like, understandably, I can totally understand if a partner says, no, we do not want to talk about the mistakes we made, because then a customer is going to say, you made a mistake. You're an expert. Why did you do this? And I've seen legal documents that point out all these things. It's not a comfortable conversation. So this is just a report. So I'm like, hey, what went wrong here? How could we have figured this out and seen the warning signs earlier? So that's just how I roll. And yes, I am not a YOLO kind of guy. Like, this is just a report layout. How hard could it be, right? Well, it turns out the report layout needed an extension to modify the report. And I don't know that we could have possibly known to ask the questions to figure out what was different about their old statement. So, yeah. Ted makes a good point. as customers go through a project like this, maybe every 10 years, right? It's not something they normally do. The value of an AAR to them is low. Great point. Yep. So I'm looking at this as something we do every single day, multiple times a day. So we need to improve this process. This is like having a fire drill on Thursday night, not pleasant. And when I have to open VS Code, like I get grumpy. It was kind of cool, but it's like, what am I doing? Like multiple breakdowns had to have occurred for me to get pulled into VS Code. Because it makes me realize that I just don't code, right? But it was kind of fun. I figured it out. It compiled miraculously thanks to Stephen Render's blog post, which I tweeted about. And it was 4 lines. On before pre-data item, set filter, and it just worked. I was like, whoa. It was kind of miraculous. It was kind of fun. So anyway, that was Thursday. I have previously talked about BC demo environments and Eric Hogard's method of signing up for, yes, I still have the sticky thing on top of the VS Code because I wanted to take this screenshot, but I noticed it when I took this screenshot. I'm like, oh, it's so annoying. So if you're not familiar, what Ted is referring to is this line at the top of VS Code where it kind of folds the different sections of code and kind of stacks them up. So you see what the file name is, what the procedure or method name is, and it keeps those as like fixed headers, kind of like fixed columns in Excel or whatever. So you see which procedure you're in. Now, when I didn't know what was going on, we literally thought this was a bug in VS Code. We kept restarting, like, what is going on? When I was working with Franklin, we figured out that this is an option called sticky code or something like that, sticky something. And I tweeted about it, and a couple of people seemed to appreciate that and wanted to turn it off. Natalie, our BC Talks librarian, said she liked it because when you're in a 500-line procedure, method, code unit, whatever, you kind of want to know where you're at. I get that, but most of the stuff I work with is small. Otherwise, I would no idea what I'm looking at. So I'll let our developers decide whether they want to keep the sticky thing on or off. BC demo environments. Eric Hogard's method is to sign up for Microsoft 365 Business Basic is what I think it's called. That is $6 per month if you pay by the year, or $7.20 a month if you pay by the month. That gets you a single user email address, access to Teams, and I don't know if it includes Office or not, or Office Online. I don't remember. But what it does get you is a Business Central demo environment, which is cool because you have full access to BC Admin Center, full access to production in 3 sandboxes. It is still a demo license, so it's not a paid BC license, so you can't create new companies and you can't do certain things, but it's perfectly fine for learning and demo and testing. And I met a customer in San Antonio at the Summit Conference who wanted to learn Business Central before even starting an implementation. So I told him about this. But I recently was looking at this page and I discovered there is a small link where if you are super budget conscious or an independent consultant or someone outside North America or Europe where $6 a month is a significant sum of money, you can save a little bit more by choosing the plan without Teams. And that gets you down to $475 a month if you pay annually. Now, you will not get the Teams functionality, so you won't be able to fully learn and play with and test the Business Central Teams integration, which admittedly is pretty cool. But if you were on an extreme budget, you're just a solo individual, you're a student who is looking to learn Dynamics, this is an option that'll save you, $1.25 a month on an annual basis. So something I found, thought I'd share. It's an option if you're not interested in Teams. The PQC hype train. This is like, if that isn't a geeky insider phrase, I do not know what is. A friend shared this article from Ars Technica with me by Dan Gooden. That name sounds really familiar, but I don't know who he is. I didn't look him up to refresh my memory. And he talks about a couple of articles that have come out in the last couple of years, several from South China Morning Post, coincidentally, maybe there's a pattern there, talking about attacks on encryption, attacks on, RSA encryption specifically, attacks on the encryption algorithms, different techniques for mathematical attacks. And he basically, in this article, QR code above, he basically tries to point out that these are either debunked or the information that continues to be repeated to this day has found to have been invalid, such as a paper about the Schnorr's algorithm, which purported to claim that there's a different type of attack that is a faster attack, a polynomial attack against these encryption algorithms. This is a big deal because it dramatically reduces the attack time against the modern encryption algorithms. But I hadn't heard this. Apparently that was debunked or found to have flaws, and the Schnorr's algorithm was found to be invalid, which first I had heard about it. And then this recent one was a claim that quantum computers by D-Wave, like, I don't know, 1,200 qubits or something, were able to successfully attack and break lower bit level RSA encryption. And he is pointing out that he believes those papers to be totally flawed and essentially invalid and made up. So very, very thick reading, very difficult reading, kind of deep, technical, super nerdy stuff that I kind of barely understood. But anyone freaking out over quantum computers at the moment, he's saying it's totally overblown. And so he calls it the post-quantum computing hype train. But with that said, I think that just the progress, like everything else these days, is going to go very quickly. And so you may dismiss post-quantum or quantum computers at this point because they don't have 2 million qubits. Well, when they get to 50,000, 100,000, we're going to start to see some issues. Eric says you still have to have access to quantum computer anyway. Yes, but the NSA and other organizations are hoovering up all this encrypted data, and they're storing it in like the Utah data center, the largest data center in the world out in the middle of the desert. And all of this information is going to be cracked eventually. So the NSA and other nation states, and it's just a sign. And if there is an algorithm that has a faster attack method against these encryption algorithms, it's going to fall pretty quickly. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to happen faster. People are saying 10, 20 years. I'm going to guess in 10 years, we're going to need to be moving to post-quantum lattice-based crypto. Yeah, the NSA is my friend. Yeah, well, every time I drive by that data center, it just reminds me. I just saw this note about Windows 10. Microsoft is apparently has an end-of-life announcement for Windows 10. You may notice on any Windows 10 computers, there's the additional nag. Hey, we're going to end support for Windows 10. And they are now saying if you want extended security updates, you need to pay $30 for a year. I don't know if it's 1 year only or what. But I was like, okay, fine. But then I saw these numbers. Look at that. 62%, according to this statistic, 62% of computers are still on Windows 10. So Microsoft has a little bit of a problem. Like, I'm not motivated to upgrade to Windows 11 if the computer's working fine. Like, I have no preference. There's nothing about Windows 11 I particularly care about or need. So 33% Windows 11 adoption, 2.8 still on Windows 7. So yeah, unless they force me, I'm not going to take a Windows 10 computer and upgrade it to Windows 11. When I wipe it, rebuild it, or, get a new one, maybe. But yeah, thought that was interesting. And Friday, Viernes, here we are. And Ted, shout out to Ted. Live stream. ERP Center of Excellence call coming up, and I might not be late for once. Wow. And then our usual BC customer call. And regarding the customer that I had a call with, I think it was on Tuesday, that had the internal developer that developed all this code that is not in source code management, I mentioned this on Twitter, and Ted had an interesting idea. Like, if the code has been deployed as a PTE with source available, is there a method to just extract that out of BC and dump it into a proper repo? So you can go around to these customers or partners, sadly, and you can extract the code, not even have to figure out what VS Code project they're using. Can we extract this and at least have a snapshot we can push into DevOps or GitHub to have something to start with? It may not be like the ultimate place you want to go, but at least have a starting point. Interesting idea. And I don't believe Alpaca supports that at this time. I don't know that they would be motivated to do that. Maybe, I'll have talks with them to see if that's something they'd be interested in. I did email them about this customer, said, look, I'm not going to try to save $5 for this customer. If they want my help, they need to have their code in DevOps with Alpaca, period, because that's all we use. That's all I want to support. I'm not going to try to figure out another DevOps automation tool. Like, it's just not worth our time. It takes weeks for us to get up to speed with that, and we don't want to deal with 4 different solutions. So I contacted Cosmo, talked to Marcus, and we're going to get them signed up. If the customer wants to proceed, we're going to have to refactor their VS Code project, get it prepped for Alpaca, get it pushed to DevOps, and be able to work with it from there. So that's part of the proposal we have. So yeah, interesting idea from Ted. If we encounter this enough, we may try to come up with a solution to extract it. And I may wink, Eric Hogard, wink, wink, may enlist the help of someone much smarter than me to make that happen. Excellent update from Berlin, El Salvador. Jocelyn is wrapped up a BC procedure documentation project. Very interesting, very detailed documentation of every single procedure for a customer. And as I mentioned, she will be leading our AAR on the report extension that we had, the crisis on Thursday night to get done. So I'm like, it's yours, Jocelyn. You have full authority to investigate everything, figure out what happened, reconstruct all the communication, the timing, the breakdowns, what we missed, what we could have done better, what we did well. And you're in charge. So she's going to document that and tell us how to improve. David continued to work with the report layouts. So he's wrapping things up. He's jumping right into BC telemetry. So he is going to learn BC telemetry in and out from the setting up App Insights in Azure, Entra, whatever it's called these days, getting it configured in a BC tenant or environment, and then utilizing the Power BI reports. Then he's going to train all the other Berliners. And then we're going to have a call with a telemetry expert who's going to give us some demos and education. And Ronald is continuing to work on our Power Automate flows, learning about that. He's encountering the fun of Power Automate and all of its quirks and features, as Doug DeMuro might say. And Franklin is making great progress on AL Dev. He knows nothing about Business Central. He is a beginner programmer who did some Java and Oracle type stuff, some boot camp stuff, and he's doing another training program right now. He has used Git. So he is just jamming with AL. It's miraculous. So in a couple of weeks, he's creating some sample extensions. Granted, he's still learning, but he said, Steve, can you send me a couple of real BC projects so I can see what real code looks like? So he is just jumping in. He created an extension, created some custom pages and tables. Now he's doing list pages, adding number series, automatic assignment. So he's doing great. I mean, folks, if you think that you cannot hire someone who does not know BC or AL or does not have experience and they can't do the job, I have 5 people in Berlin who are just killing it. And I'm just proving that belief wrong. Now, will they be billable for a consulting firm day one? No, but can you tolerate 3 months of training till they're productive? I mean, I think so. We're doing it. So that is the Excellence update, and Jocelyn is the queen of Halloween decorations and the party planning committee chair. And so she fully decked out the Career Center, as you see in Berlin at our Career Center there. And they had an awesome Halloween party. So they got food and desserts. They played some games. They took the afternoon off, had a good time. And so super cool what they're building there. Great team. Oh, and I see I have my slides stacked incorrectly. Mi permiso, let me fix that, bring to front. So these are the laptops that I purchased off of eBay. These are donations to the community center there. Because the 470s have held up, verdict's still out, jury's still out on the X1 carbons, but the 470 is a thicker laptop. It's not lightweight. It is not super thin, ultra portable. It has a physically larger cooling system with the visible cooling fins, bigger fans. And I think it's running at a, lower threshold and lower thermal envelope there. So I got 3 more of these things, 3 laptops off of eBay, $585 plus tax was $600 something, less than $650 for 3 laptops that I'll be donating to the center there. They use them for English classes. Students come in and use them. People stopping by the community center come in. So they're heavily used by everyone there. So I bought 3 more, and yeah, $600 basically, like literally changing the lives of people who are able to take English classes there. So it's like the ultimate bargain, and these things are absolute tanks, fully repairable. Every part imaginable is on eBay. So we're going to see how that works out. And I've also purchased full silicone mats, screwdriver kits, everything and parts, everything they need. We're going to have 2 repair centers for ThinkPads there at 2 different locations, or maybe 3 locations. And all of the ERP Center of Excellence, or most of the interns, will know how to take these things apart, replace all the parts. So they will help us repair all the laptops we use. They'll also be essentially a community resource for all the ThinkPads that we donate to the city of Berlin. So it's working out well. And this popped up in my feed, and it was like this strange thumbnail. Like, I get the whole clickbaity thumbnails. This thumbnail did not compel me to click on it, but it just kept nagging me in my feed. So I'm like, fine, whatever this is. So I watched it. It was actually a great video, fascinating video. This couple, I don't know where they're at, somewhere in rural United States. They're essentially off-grid, I think. And I don't know where they're getting their main internet from, but they have their main cabin, and then they building this giant workshop roughly 3,000 feet away. So this video is their story of buying over 3,000 feet of fiber optic cable and installing it themselves. And like, I would assume this is nearly impossible, but he's just like, yeah, I just watched some videos, figured it out. He says, I've never done it, so I made mistakes. And he talks about all the mistakes they made, but they pulled it off, like really incredible. So he bought this spool of 3,000 feet of 12-strand fiber, very expensive stuff apparently, but it was the cheapest of what he found, single-mode fiber. He has this whatever those cat skid steer things are, and they ran the 3,000 feet to their workshop. He shows how to cleave it, how to polish it, how to clean it, prep it, put the connectors on, everything. And he's like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but he figured it all out, and he walks through everything and shares it. Like, it is absolutely amazing. Like, I basically don't watch TV at all because I watch these and they're fascinating. So now I'm like, wow, like it's totally achievable. You got to invest in the tools, but Amazon, all this stuff is cheap nowadays. That like these cleaver and these polishing tools. And the connector ends, you just need to know which kind to get for your given network, and the adapters. He talks through all of that. Really amazing job. And so he's now got high-speed optical connection to his workshop 3,000 feet away. And he can now communicate with his family when he's there or vice versa. Like, really phenomenal job. So, family, business centralians, does your organization conduct after action reviews? Or is the conversation so uncomfortable that you avoid them at all costs because you don't want to admit that you screwed up? You have people in your organization who refuse to accept blame or take responsibility for any mistake, which I've seen in spades, right? I'm more than happy to say I screwed up. I dropped the ball. I missed that because I'm like, I don't want to do this again. It gets tiring. I don't want to get the call at 8 p.m. on Thursday saying, Steve, you need to do a report extension. I'm like, what? Are you crazy? I'm the last person you want in speed dial for that. So do you do after action reviews? Yeah, Eric says the best stuff is on YouTube. I totally agree. Like the subscription to YouTube, well worth it. Plus I get YouTube music, so I'm a happy clam. I never want to watch another commercial or, TV show again at this point. I just don't care. So for your after action reviews, when do you do them? Like, are you brave enough to admit that things didn't go perfectly? Some things went well, some things not so well, but it's in order to improve, right? And what are the common themes you've seen? Was it breakdowns at the requirement level? Yes, we had those clearly. Was it communication and coordination? Absolutely. Was it mistakes, quality issues, testing, deployment, docs? Yes, yes, yes to all of the above. Technical debt or resource constraints? Yes. Our developer was on vacation, so Steve had to step in. It's like, if that isn't a danger, like if that doesn't tell you something is very wrong when I have to start writing code, that means we need an after action review. And so it was like, perfect, let's do it. Jocelyn, batter up. You get to learn something new. So great opportunity. I'm really looking forward to it. All the Berliners going to learn. We're going to learn. Our consulting team's going to learn. We're going to try to figure out. So Chris, welcome, Chris. He says, after action review is better than a post-mortem blameless review. Yeah, I didn't want to use the term post-mortem for obvious reasons, so we're going to go with the somewhat innocuous after action review. That term exists for a reason, right? And my other question is, are you able to address the issue? And I ask that because this particular customer statement, where the customer wants to hide all payments and credits and discounts, like who does that? I don't know that we would ever know to even ask that question. We got a copy of their statement. We're like, it's a statement. It shows open invoices. It even shows remaining balance. So it shows that the customer paid down, partially paid an invoice. I don't know that we would have ever thought to ask on this fully custom historical statement they'd been using, which records are you suppressing and hiding on this data set? Like, really? Would you have known that? I don't think I wouldn't have. Eric says on the postmortem, it is the day after Halloween. Yes, that is true. So appropriate. So if you do AARs, if you analyze and see the breakdowns, have you been able to effectively address the issues? Or is this just a Groundhog Day where you just see the same mistakes over and over and over? Maybe it's people in your organization who just refuse to improve or do things right or just don't see the signs. Or maybe it's just every single customer does something quirky and you're just like, how would we have known that, right? How would we have known to ask that question? I've never asked that question in my life. Or like, how would we have known to test for that? Or, in this case, our developer was on vacation right as this got tested and came up. Why? Because we tested late. So I know the reason. I'm going to see if this gets discovered in the AAR. So anyway, Ted says, most customers don't know. They think every system does it the way they have. It's a great point. And this custom crystal report that they used for their statement was developed years ago. We asked them some questions. They're like, I don't know. Let me go look and figure out why we have a barcode on the customer statement. We're like, why do you have a barcode on a statement? They're like, I don't know. It's something, You know, no one remembers why this was created 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And so no one's going to know that in their data set filtering on that crystal report, they filtered out payments because someone, the former collection manager back then, did it that way and doesn't want to show customers they have a credit. So anyway, I'm about to find out if we can address these issues. And now we have Jocelyn at the helm. She is not shy, so she's going to say, hey, here's what happened. And I look forward to it. Anyway, there we go. So that is your BC weekly BC review. Have a good weekend. Enjoy some good coffee. And hope you had a good Halloween. So, adios, nos vemos, and que le vaya bien. Phrases that I've recently learned. Okay, talk to you later.